Testing, testing. Doggone it. Did I really go a whole minute without? Now can you hear me, Sergio? Because it seems, 5 by 5. So I had some people there. I didn't really, I said, the whole welcome and everything like that. No fisticuffs. We're going to be talking about the short season, though. I think you got that, right? Thank you. Thank you for that double mouth of two or three witnesses. But I already had the two witnesses because I saw my pulse meter going up when I was in my settings and it said 5 by 5. All good. There it's on. The little season, this is all a rush. I thought I had like 5 more minutes. It's like looking in the mirror, except he doesn't have a beard. He's smoking a joint or something. I'm smoking a cigarette. I guess there's time in this world now when people are, this is 2 hours ago. Why all giants weren't eradicated in the flood. Well, the Bible never teaches anything about tall people should be eradicated. They were tall humans who were from tribes that could be saved. Some of them were tall. That's what the Bible teaches. Now, this guy who's actually trying to, I think he's actually trying to play the merry matchmaker. We'll get back to his theology. Un momento.
No offense. Everyone's entitled to be a homo.
Exactly.
Well said. Well said.
This is the guy's channel down here.
No, but I'm a homo when I choose to be.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, shame, love. Another one that you can't have, eh?
Yeah,
And you'd make a cute couple. See if you can turn him around.
I'm all right.
So what's the deal then? You're out of work.
Check it out. I got a little bit of buffering here going on. Usually it just snaps right to it, but I can see as they
Like I say, it's not a long video anyway. I just wanted to see if it did provide an answer.
An angel sinned again in order for the new Nephilims to be produced. There are many theories, but today we will discover.
Right. But they're not in the Bible. Revelation 6 and 10 don't talk about any of the things of Jubilees, Jasher, or the 5 books of Enoch. Those are the lies they add to the Bible. And you want to be hornswoggled by that? There's a hornswoggling going on.
The true reason that Moses directly gives us. But before we get started, this is part 3 of our series called The Book of Giants. Please watch parts 1 and 2.
Say it, but I don't think that's right. I could be wrong.
Noah. The Bible states that during the time of much evil and sin, when the fallen angels came down, Noah was the only pleasure to the Lord.
It could be.
Oh. We should look it up. I just want to make sure that, we're reading the same thing, because really all it says, let's see, there were tall people. That word means there were tall people on the earth in those days. Sons of God, Bene Israel, sons of Israel, not the Bene Elohim you read about in Psalm 82. And was there a time when, like, Abimelech was telling Isaac and Jacob, hey, we like your wife. Why did he have to say, she was his half sister? He said, just tell him you're my sister. Don't tell him you're my wife. Otherwise, whoever they want to take, they'll kill me and take you as my wife. I mean, that's right there in Scripture. Unless you want to equate Enoch and Jasher and Jubilees and all the blah, blah, blah with Scripture, then you're not using Scripture for Scripture. So it didn't happen to Jacob or Isaac, but it happened to other people and those daughters of those, you know, some of those people. And there were mighty men, Gibberim, and the Gibberim, the men of renown, were the good guys in the Bible for the most part. The mighty men of Joshua, of King David. Do you want to look it up? You want to, I mean, we want to, you know, it's the Gibberim, right? Oh no, the mighty men turned into the Gibberim. Oh gosh, oh no, these Nephilim. Turned into these Gibborim. Okay. They were mighty men, strong men, practiced men, like in Samuel. All you know, you want to go fight, you be mighty men. Mighty men. The names of the mighty men of David. There were, you know, 3 mighty men with David hanging out with him, not Nephilim looking like clowns, disembodied spirits going, hey, I'm a Gibberim. And there's 2 or 3 verses that talk about the Nephilim. 3? Okay, there were tall people on the earth. Hey, look, after the flood, there's still some more tall people. Hey, look, after the flood, there's still some tall people. And the Bible said, before the flood and after the flood, there's going to be people that are bigger than the other people. Yeah, we got their architecture too. We see their big doors. We know what's happening. But we'll just play it until they emphasize how much it's not Scripture. It's apocryphal books that the Jesuits have placed out there, and they got the money to make it seem real. Matter of fact, the theology I teach, premillennialism, is the only systematic theology in the last 500 years that hasn't been presented by a Jesuit, because I'm not a Jesuit.
Does it say how he produced? I don't know.
Noah was the only truly righteous man living on the earth at that time. When God saw that the earth was corrupt and full of violence, he told Noah to build an ark out of gopher wood. After the ark was built and Noah took his
That's true. That'll go for wood. Absolutely.
sons, their wives, and a pair of each animal, the book of Genesis states,
And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast.
3 of each animal. 7 of each animal, wasn't it? They went in
7 of the clean animals, 2 of every other animal. Move on, TJ. Let's go.
Hey,
It's
Derek,
right.
good to see you, bro. Good to see you, man.
Wow.
And of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. All in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, died. And
And there were 8 souls that didn't die. And we are all related to them. And any of the, oh, look at these massive sins that the Nephilim do. Humans do them also. Humans do them. You're as evil as the Nephilim, according to the Bible and according to history and according to what we're looking at today. I mean, some people claim there's people in power that cook and eat children. I've heard that from the mouth of a president, I think.
every living substance was destroyed which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven. And they were
sons of Anak.
There was a little distortion in his face there that was a little scary.
Okay, so where in the Bible does it describe anything like this? In the Bible. Where does it describe anything like this? That you can make a graven image of it and in your mind go, whew, boy, I'm glad I read the book of Enoch. I understand scripture now. My salvation is based on what I've learned from the book of Enoch. Hallelujah for the book of Enoch.
This is definitely AI produced, isn't it?
Ooh, it's scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty accurate. I mean, I didn't like the humans for instead of daughters of humans instead of daughters of man, and I didn't like it repenteth thee, as in it repenteth God. Didn't like that.
And describe them as giants. But now the question is, where exactly did these giants
Tony Cornelius, good to see you, bro. Good to see you. Thanks for coming, bro. Thanks for coming.
come from? Where did these sons of Anak come from to occupy the land of Canaan? The first belief that people have is that a previous giant or Nephilim had snuck onto the ark with Noah.
Okay, so do you understand where this takes you? Where you have to go, where the Bible just moves forward like, oh, we never knew a giant snuck onto the ark. How childish. How insane. How desperately crying out for, Lord, please give me the cognitive dissonance thing. Question 14 was, for how long was the dragon bound in the bottomless pit? 1,000 years. No more, no less. How about that? I'm just moving through these things because I've got a lot going on here today. Hey, 16 Alpha, I saw you earlier today. My goodness, show me Sasquatch. Are you still hanging on out there? What in the world? I hope that you're not. This guy, he can be a little confrontational, but he also can, pop in there with a good question. So good to see you again. I hope. We were listening to this earlier today. I saw you there. Got you. Somebody's looking, like, what's the Trinity, man?
Look, but it says God was manifest in the flesh. So how do we reconcile this? If we're going to be honest with ourselves, we reconcile this by the scripture and only using that language and making it short and simple and making ourselves believe it, convincing ourselves with the truth. So what does it say? The word became flesh and dwelt among us. It says the word of
So he's sticking with the scripture here. He's talking about the Trinity, but one thing is, other people have been brainwashed. We were brainwashed. Our eyes were opened by God. Though their eyes have not, so far, at least for some of them, been opened.
and it doesn't forfeit the invisibility of God. And he is literally called in another place the immortal, the invisible. I'm telling you, it all reconciles together when you keep God one. Just because we see certain language that in our day or in our tongue, it separates or it literally means more than one person. Well, that's not God, because God is not more than one person. You're not more than one person who's listening right now. We're made in the image of God, made in the image of Jesus.
By Jesus, for Jesus, through the water, so that we can be living this life, and we are living this life. And I remember when the Benjamin Owen and the Bear movement, and he'd come out there playing that piano, and everybody else in the world except RJ and myself knew who he was. But we caught on. He was in famous TV shows, and he thought it was fun to mock the Trinity, and like at first he was kind of like, this flat earth is interesting, and then everybody was, was every funny bear name in the world, we're going to be like bears. And questioning the Trinity was on the table, and you can do that from the Bible, but that wasn't enough. So they had to go flat earth, Anunnaki. It was all part of a plan. But we know from the Bible, we hold on to faith no matter what, the world, who is going to be the majority and remain in power, believe. Because the whole preterist post-millennial invasion, first through their language of people who refused to stop calling it preterism when they were talking about the short season and the golden age past. They know who they are. They just don't care because it gets them hits, and that's how they make their living. I know that it's tough to make a living out there today. This is a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I don't give medical advice, financial advice. I usually show this one thing. I was hoping I already showed it, but you never know. So I'm going to show it again. You know, we're going to look at this. And so even though this guy is a doctor, I know that at certain times, you know, I think they took him off of the YouTube. But now he's back on talking turkey with Tom. We're going to hear this part, go back to the beginning.
Water or ask the water the question, what is falling down? So the water seems to even be able to think in a kind of humorous, abstract way. And it showed us London Bridge. And then we have some quotes about that water is the essence of life.
Should I read it? No, let's see which ones I did save that I wanted to read. Here's what I got so far. Remember how sometimes we look at these pictures? This is the thumbnail. Somehow that made it onto the thumbnail. I was looking at this. I don't know if I saved it or not, but different. Remember how the Bible describes that they would, King Tyre, when they hired him, they'd make the pillars and then they'd put a separate capital on top. Here they didn't, you know, they just fluted them out the same as, well, it's a fluted column. I thought that was important for you to see. And we looked at this, the Barabar Caves, and how, I mean, see this scale of accuracy of points between what we would call like less than 0.03. That's how perfect they polished these. Remember we looked at these the other day. I guess this granite doesn't normally get that polished unless you really want it to be polished. And I was looking at these. So here's your modern, we can do stone jars as well as everything else. Well, so here's the modern attempt, and you can see, we'll look at their standard deviations comparatively. So that's just a whopping big number of differences, right? On how smooth they can do. And the ones from the ancient ones were that polished inside and out. These were not. So get it down into language we understand. The best they can do is 0.033. Now they were trying to match 0.002 for the, you know, the interior of these. Well, as you can see, these are order of magnitude that they can't do it. It's just not good enough. Whereas you can see the spikes of the ancient, almost perfect precision. They say, oh, they could do things perfectly. They could make it carved stone. Almost perfect. Okay. There's almost perfect. Mind-boggling, science confusing. So, hey, look, talking turkey with Tom. I clicked because I needed this. This stuff coagulates, not this. This is the structure of a living being. Okay, so he shows some. So we'll look in his, What's the timestamp? Did I get the timestamp on this? Oh no, I didn't get the timestamp on it. Oh well. So, and now everybody in the world's talking about, what have you learned in the last 4 years? Well, somehow it involves in what we used to call Flat Earth Nation Golden Age Past. That was a dreamed up title by Do Re Mi in 2016, and we hit the ground running. The famous Doug Bartles, the famous Randy from Wisconsin, others, we tore this up. The Stones cried out. Everybody knows about it. And during COVID, it was perverted, but it was. Everybody knows about it. Most everybody. Tom knows. He's a doctor. And, you know, he showed all these things going like, wow, I guess I'm going to have to read some of these quotes. Water. So water is generally different from that of bulk water and becomes more bulk-like in cancer cells. Huh. Philip Ball, 20-year editor, Physical Science, he said that. So, and anyway, we don't believe anybody anyway. We're just putting it out on YouTube with that free use thing, when, like, you know, basically what the world is going to say. I'm trying to trick people to getting down on their knees and believing in their heart that Jesus Christ is Lord, and then confessing it with their mouth. And guilty. That's it. Water. What we have found in our laboratory is that the entry of mind projected thought, of mind projected through a crystal, will structure water like it was frozen into ice. The remarkable and unique differentiation is that water, when it is structured with mind and with thought, remains fluid but structured. That type of category is called a liquid crystal, a mesophase, a mesomorphic transition. And when it gets hit with the glittering sword, boom, it turns it. If it's liquid, it turns into a gemstone built up by good works. And gold, silver is also available for those who, God is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him and knows that he has called us to emulate Christ in suffering and in doing good. Water, since the molecular structure of water is the essence of all life, except Jesus is the word that gives it that life. The man who can control that structure in cell phones will change the world. Okay, that's not a real quote. The real quote is, the man who can control that structure in cellular systems. I was just playing games with your mind. Wow, this is a long one. Organisms are so dramatically coherent at the molecular level that they appear to be crystalline. There is a dynamic liquid crystalline continuum of connective tissues and extracellular matrix linking directly into the equally liquid crystalline cytoplasm in the interior of every single cell in the body. Every part is in communication with every other part through a dynamic turntable responsive liquid crystalline medium that pervades the whole body, from organs and tissues to the interior of every cell. It kind of reminds me when I remind you that you are a battery operated Taurus Analema Mobius strip, whether you like it or not. Take a breath, Paco. Don't tell me what to do. Oh, it's supposed to look like a wedding ring. List of the partial things, list of structures or functions that science said was good, that are said to exist in the human biology, that are either unproven, incorrect, or proven not to exist at all. And this is from Dr. Tom Cowan. He is a doctor. I don't know if he has permission to say this on YouTube, but I can repeat it here. So there's no such thing as a lipid bilayer or cell membrane. According to him, no such thing as a ribosome. Now, that was shocking to me. No blood-brain barrier. I lost my mind. Wow, and this is a short video. No endoplastic reticulum. Come on, Golgi apparatus is gone, or never was, or we don't know. Synapses in nerves, that blew my mind. Whatever this opiate, etc. You know, the receptors in cell membranes. There's no receptors. Well, that leaves open the door that there's possibly no inhibitors for serotonin to be uptaked by. No synapses in nerves, blew my mind, neurotransmitters, liposomes, nuclear pores, and immune. What? I'm wearing a shirt that declares my love and knowledge of and the importance of our immune system. No autoimmunity? There's doubts about DNA as I am promising everything for such a short video. No wonder we can say we only trust the Bible. We don't know this guy Tom, but you can see there's these others. So it's not proven that the government and associated foundations and institutions care about your well-being. That's not proven either. Finally, the ability to understand logic or reasoning is not most intact human beings, or logic reasoning is most intact. Okay, is that not a well-written sentence? Sometimes doctors don't write the sentences they want. No, so this is the best picture he shows in this video of a synapse. This is a synapse, and they try to go like, well, there's a bubble and a break there. Well, there's one up here too. Why isn't that a synapse? Why isn't this marked synapse? Why isn't this marked synapse? I think that Tom at this point said, what the hell? Why isn't this one marked synapse? It's not like, you know, it's like, if that's a synapse, I'm doubting a synapse. I mean, I've shown this picture going like wireless receivers, but it happens some other way. Probably in our kidneys or who knows? But I guess what they did to get this is they cut the freaking nerve and it mushrooms out and it starts healing, and they notice some little popping flashes of lights, and they told me it was a synapse, and I believed them. So this is that ribosomes. A circle right there in your muscle. It's like, and your muscle just works around it. There's another little one. I did not completely, no comprehende.
From Sven Gorky and Maywan Ho, who's a geneticist, and that it is called a liquid crystal or a mesophase.
I already read it.
And water. And then we saw the remarkable correspondence between what we actually know is present in the living tissue, which is a circular structure in the middle called the nucleus. And then it has some sort of antenna to collect the information from the outside. And then it's embedded into water, just like the Taj Mahal. And so you can see an image of that.
I think he means to say exactly like the Taj Mahal, because when you use the word just, and let me nerd on you here, because I didn't have a problem. A dependency. Look, I was not hooked on phonics, but I liked them. And the word just means it just happened, or it was a just decision by a just God. It's something like that. So I think he means there's other better words, Dr. Tom.
That, and I would then ask the question, so who built this and how did they know that this is the structure of living beings and the way to harvest the electromagnetic energy?
Come on, man. How did they know? I want to see if there's any questions. There are not. How did they know? Tom, there was a time where if, the plan was at the end from the beginning that their languages be confounded because there would be nothing withheld from them. Nothing would have been withheld from them. Come on. Do people even read the Bible anymore? Anybody read the Bible? I'm kidding. I know you guys read the Bible. You read it with me all the time.
And then essentially download it into the water to be used probably to power and create life.
Sustain the earth, irrigate the earth. It's the mist that went up. It wasn't fog. It was irrigation. It's what it taught. The whole earth was irrigated, starforded. And welcome to the club, Dr. Colin.
For the people. And was this really made by ignorant peasants who were actually moving around with donkey carts with square wooden wheels? And if so, how did they make such a thing? And we see this again in the Vatican, same formation, dome antenna on pillars, which then act like capacitors downloaded into this moving water below. And we see it, I think, St. Petersburg. There you don't see the water.
Boom! Welcome to the club,
I won't get
Dr.
into this,
Colin.
but we've talked about the heart, and we even talked about the heart is not a pump, and coronary artery disease has nothing to do.
Oh, ask RJ in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, Randy and Donna. They were there. They witnessed him call us, and we broke it down. How the helical heart, the heart is not a pump. We introduced them to, we both have the same nickname, Paco, to honor Dr. Torrance Paco Guasp, the man who showed us the helical heart. Everything is coming together for a narrow road, people, because we're not going to change the world. We'll be encompassed about by that whole Gog and Magog thing. Don't act like I don't have some Bible verses pulled up for, I don't know, probably about 20 minutes.
Do with or blockage of the coronary arteries has little, if anything, to do with heart attacks.
We know.
Okay, I'm going to just go through the rest of these really quick. And again, this is not meant to convince you of everything, but just to give you an overview of some.
Who's he even talking to? Hi, Tom.
That we live in a profoundly scientifically illiterate culture.
Huh.
And I would include in that most of the so-called lay people. But unfortunately, I would also include in that many, if not most, of the scientists and many, if not most, of the medical doctors.
Holy macaroni. What makes you say that?
And I would say the most important thing that I've learned is very short, and you can encapsulate it in the following, which is the essence of logical, rational, scientific thinking.
The essence of this is what we've been begging for, is it not? If we agree. But otherwise, it's what we should be looking for. It doesn't mean we have to agree with him, but in essence, our intent should be logical, rational, scientific, observable, repeatable thinking, What's always true? Well, but the Bible. It was not everything else.
Is there are claims made, in other words, positive statements, such and such is true, or here's the way such and such works. And you do not have to have an alternative hypothesis or theory in order to investigate that claim. And a corollary to that is if the claim can be falsified, then it will qualify as being scientific. If there's no way to falsify the claim, in other words, show that the claim is incorrect, then it's a belief. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with believing stuff. We all do it. But it's important to differentiate those two. That the first is the first being something you can falsify. You can do an experiment and show whether that's true or not. That would count as a scientific inquiry, and that's using logic and rational thinking. Culture and healthy world. And if we don't get that right, we're giving up the primary thing that makes us actually human beings. And the final thing I'll say before I get into the details here is that as far as I can see, there's 3 reasons why people are unable to do this about any particular subject. The first is they're simply not interested in the subject, which I would say is fair enough. I'm not interested in carburetors. I don't know whether there are carburetors or how they work or what they're made of, but I can tell you that I'm never going to make pronouncements or make people in the world do anything because there is or isn't carburetors. So if you're not interested
Wow. Huh?
of their own profession, in other words, it's like a car mechanic who doesn't know what a brake is. But fair enough. If you're not interested, just say so. But then don't even weigh in on the subject because you've got nothing to say about it.
What
The
carburetors?
second reasons, and the third is they have nefarious interests. So with that, even weigh in on the subject because
Just the
you've got
second one, I'm sorry.
nothing to say about it. The second one is you have nefarious purposes, and I think this
I thought that was the third one.
one is rare, but there are people who know the truth, who know the real story, but have some reason.
They still cook and eat children and they teach other people that that's a good thing to do. Tom's not going to say that. I'm adding to that because I'm Alan Paco and I like that. We should keep that front and center. There's some bad people in the world trafficking children out there. I'm not claiming it was, it's only in the United States. Of course not. Tom, bail me out.
Reason or another, political or economic, or could be a whole lot of reasons why
Nefarious.
they attempt to bamboozle and lie to people.
Bamboozle.
And again, that doesn't come up very much. The first one does come up a lot. This one doesn't come up, but it is possible. And the second one or the third one, sorry, which is the bulk of the people, including the scientists and the medical doctors, is simply that you have a thought disorder, that you have not actually learned how to think properly.
Yeah, they must have went to the same schools, the normal schools, and got normalized into believing a globe. Tom, you still have some ways to go. You've learned a lot in the past 4 years. Young man, you are not finished. You think you might be. What have you learned?
Because it has most of the points. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see this. So here's a quote. Once a person steps on the path that is no path, they will always be tempted, challenged. Unless you have an unshakable commitment to this work, you'll get sidetracked by every.
Did they not know they were stepping onto? This is not a path. I guess they're making it a path because it says they stepped onto a path. Okay, word game. The next one was, in order to be effective, truth must penetrate like an arrow, and that is likely to hurt. I didn't think his quotes were that great here on this one. History is a pack of lies about events that never happened, told by people that were not there. That one is somewhat better. It's a little bit better quote. What do you got here, Tommy? Progress consists not in the increase of truth, but in freeing it from wrappings. The truth is obtained like gold, not by letting it grow bigger, but by washing off from it everything that isn't gold. That's a commie, Tommy. Leo Tolstoy. Where are you getting these quotes? two more. Our supposed knowledge today of what life is on a microscopic scale is based only on observations made on dead tissue, which are subject to an astonishingly harmful preparation protocol. For years, they would say, like, let's dump some hydrogen peroxide on it and plump it up. Hey, Sherlock Holmes to Watson. Are we quoting? Not, I've done it. But anyway, how often have I said to you that when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth? Okay. Loading up quotes. You take these, Tommy. What is this nonsense?
Book called Can You Catch a Cold? If you want to look into it more, there's been at least a couple hundred studies.
Couple hundred. This one here is a study from March 1919. 9 separate experiments on healthy men to prove contagions, exposing sick people or the bodily fluids. November 1919. Well, that was the end. The 11th of November at the 11th hour, on the 11th minute, they signed a surrender treaty. No, it was an armistice. That war is still technically, and when everybody was time to go home, they sent them home with some people say they sent them home with a present. 1920, more controlled. Okay.
Showing that it has been falsified, that sick people make well people or animals sick. That theory has been falsified. We don't know of a single proper controlled study in the medical literature that shows otherwise. So that hypothesis, like I say, has been falsified.
Okay, so let's just cut down to the bottom here. Whatever he's hypothesizing about, you probably get it. I don't know what it. We're not doctors here giving advice or financial advice, but I guess there were many of these studies done until the 1940s when they got involved in the war, and they decided they're done. They got it figured out. We got a whole new way of studying things. Something weird about the 1940s, 1950s. So here's some other papers.
The quote virus from the host tissue, they admit it openly in emails, which means, because according to their own theory, the virus, so-called, and the host tissue are made of the same material, that is to say, proteins and DNA and RNA. If you've never separated them, you have no idea of which piece, DNA, RNA, protein, came from which source. Therefore, that eliminates the possibility of investigating the DNA or RNA of an alleged virus and claiming that it came from an alleged virus, because you've never separated the two, so you have no basis for that.
So this is from 2020. So this is basically, I guess, they knew all, Tom, what we have learned in the past 4 years. This is 4-year-old stuff, but it's new to some of us that this is. It's confusing, right? Because it's like, is this what we were told? Who's this guy? I guess let's just keep listening.
Claim. And all I can say, 3 reasons why you don't understand that if you never separate something from the material that it's embedded in, and they're made of the same thing, from then on, you can never say where that part of it came from. And if you don't get that, it's either that you're not interested, you have nefarious purposes, or you have a thought disorder. Therefore, until you isolate, separate.
It's the harshness of that. You have a thought disorder. Let's tone it down. As I've learned, I used to be that harsh, or maybe even harsher, but now we should just say things like those in need of a Hegelian dialectic moment. They need to get shocked into their senses, but not with electromagnetism. Oh, everything is so violent.
Purify the virus and show that it exists. Any study of the so-called genetic material will never be able to separate where the source, the origin, the provenance of the genetic material came from, and so it is an invalid study. And I would say, period, on that. Again, if that doesn't make sense to you, it's because you have a thought problem. This was our friend Vince Recanelli. I think that's how you say his name. One of the foremost virologists in the United States, and I won't play this clip, who's trying to teach us what isolation means, which is a prerequisite for saying something exists and that it can be studied. If you want to study these pencil, you have to separate it, isolate it from the marker, and that way you can study it and find out what this and this alone is made of. And the clip I have here says, well, we don't really have a definition for isolation, but the best one is the isolation of a virus means the virus has been isolated. And if you think that's a reasonable approach and not the real definition of isolation, which means the separation of one thing from all other things, then you have a thought disorder like Vince does. Okay, never mind. And then we looked at over and over again.
You got you on that one, right?
The claim that the way, like Vince says, the way you isolate a virus is to take unpurified material, which interestingly,
So suffice it to say, we got some questions about what's going on here. And we know things are just only pictures. We're checking up on this guy here to see what's going on in the world.
or how about this one? And if you believe those are, then you believe these show unicorns, or even this one.
Oh.
But Tom, what about this? Isn't this a picture of the virus? SARS-CoV-2. Here's another one. Now, you remember my pumpkin challenge test? That's Pumpkin when he was a little guy. He's a lot bigger now. And I showed him the next 10 pictures. They were either from viruses, SARS-CoV-2, or broken down kidney biopsies from before 2000. Therefore, couldn't possibly be a virus. And Pumpkin got 6 out of 10 right. How about this one? Compare this one to that one. Looks identical. That one is from a kidney biopsy from before 2000. How about those? There we see a cluster of SARS.
Your histology and stuff. So he had some questions about what's going on here.
Okay, and then we went on to look at bigger issues in cell biology, trying to find out what of this stuff that we see with under the microscope.
Is this boring you? Because I mean, it doesn't bore me. You see these centroids, these 9 microtube. I'm pretty under the microscopes, frozen in judgment in the stones, crying out, because some of their cells get pretty big on those, the great big, the pre-creation. I mean, there are some big 3-mile giants. You heard of 3 Mile Island, or rabbit trail that didn't pay off
because we don't have any sensory input telling us what our tissue is made of. We don't see any of these things. We don't hear them. We don't feel them. We don't taste them. So this is the theoretical diagram of the cell. We all learn this. Every biology student, every medical doctor, every scientist. These are the things that the cell contains. Just take a look, some highlights here. We have the nucleus in purple in the middle. We have the endoplasmic reticulum, the snake that connects the nuclear membrane with the cell membrane. We have the circular ribosomes, the mitochondria, the Golgi apparatus. So which of these are actually true? So we took a look at some of these, and one of the things we found out is that you can never see a ribosome except with an
I see hundreds of them. I guess it's probably one of those things. If you look at it long enough, you'll see a picture of somebody fishing in a rowboat. I want to jump ahead a little bit more to this part here. I might need some help on this. Anybody understands this better? Well, at all? Drop your idea.
come out with perfect circles. And Hillman spent a long time proving that there can't possibly be anything in our tissues or cells called ribosomes, and that they're basically gas bubbles and an artifact of the entire process.
Huh.
So no such thing as ribosomes, and basically no such, you can do the same sort of
Now he's going to go into the synapse thing, because right here I was going like, Tom, what? Huh? Why?
process with all the other things. You do the endoplasmic reticulum, and it's a supposedly, that's a picture of it there, a cord that binds that connects the nuclear membrane with the cell membrane. There's many of these cords. When the cell is alive, the tissue is alive, you see the nucleus doing these 360 rotations, and then you have to ask yourself, how come the cords don't get all mixed up when it's rotating 360 degrees? And that also tells you that that cannot possibly be a actual structure in a living tissue. And also the fact that you always see them in this sort of longitudinal section, never in the orientations that you would see in an actual thing that existed in the actual tissue.
Ugh. I know. Tom, you're killing us, man. That's supposed to be a faked picture of it? Please.
Through which the neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin, they travel. So these are little gaps. You can see the gap between one end of the nerve and the other. And I've talked about how there can't possibly be these gaps. They're never seen except in electron microscopy. I spent a number of days looking for a picture of a synapse in an actual nerve. And what I realized years ago is that the nerve impulse, which is basically instantaneous, the time between thinking, move my finger, and moving it is almost nothing. And if there's 20 synapses in the nerves between my brain and my finger, that would take at least 1 second, and that's got even not accounting for the movement down the axon of the nerve. And so this cannot actually be the anatomy of the nerve. And Hillman again went through this and showed that it's because of the dehydration of the nerves and the processes that they use to get this picture that the nerve breaks, the ends roll up, just like if you cut a piece of wool, the ends separate and they roll up, and that's why you see this. And all these chemicals are released not to propagate a nerve impulse, but as they're released as a result of the function of the nerve. The bricks, and you can dissect the bricks until one so-called molecule is left, and look at each individual molecule, and I guarantee you will never find the blueprint for the house. All you'll find is the components of the bricks, because the blueprint was in the mind of the architect. So again, I went looking for some picture that would show me that there is actually a synapse in the nerve. Spent a whole day looking for this, and you can see the thing in the middle, SY. That was the best picture I found for what a synapse is, and I am completely unconvinced that that represents anything that would possibly be a transmission gap in a nerve. That's just another electron microscopy stained tissue of God knows what. So again, I would say the idea that there are synapses in nerves and therefore neurotransmitters, which is the basis of modern psychiatry and neurology, has been falsified. And unless somebody can demonstrate anatomically by clear dissection with control, so you know that you're not creating artifacts, that theory should be discarded. And then just to pick up one more thing, I looked at the idea, which is commonly heard and even gets into the vaccine issue that there is a blood-brain barrier. In other words, an anatomic barrier between the blood vessels leading to and into the brain and the actual brain tissue. And so I did the thing which I think is the experiment that would show it, just like this. I measured. So I went looking for pictures of the relationship, the barrier between, say, a liver and the blood vessel. And so here you see it, and there is no anatomical barrier, liver and blood vessel. So there is no liver blood barrier. But here's the nerve, and you see the blood vessels in the circular thing. You see them in different orientations. That's what you see when something is actually real. If something is completely uniform in every slice, every possible view, then that thing is an artifact, because there's no way you can cut an orange or a banana or anything else real randomly or put it in a blender and have every orientation look like a perfect circle. Simply doesn't happen. And here's the brain blood barrier, and it looks exactly the same. There is no cellophane, there is no anatomical barrier. So again, unless you have a thought disorder or some way to prove this, to show this, which I have not seen, there is no blood-brain barrier. Things obviously get selectively absorbed due to the different qualities of different tissue. So some things show up in the brain more than the liver or kidneys. That's not what's in dispute. The positive claim is there is an anatomical barrier, and I would say that has been disproven. And so here's a partial list of all the things that are said to, and we see this again in the Vatican, same formation, dome antenna on pillars, which then act like capacitors downloaded into this moving water below. And we see it, I think, St. Petersburg. There you don't see the water. First free settlers arrive. And then 1850, the population is apparently 400,000, and they were living in thatched huts. And then you have a gold rush. And interestingly, you see some primitive structures, but some interesting, with the arrow, you see some other structures that are nearby, which are a little bit out of step here for this. So 1860, 9 years later, the population is 1 million, still not that many people living in very primitive conditions. And here you see from the 1850s or so, the photos of the conditions that the people were living in. And this is about what you would expect from people who, without many skills and without many tools, what they could actually carve out for themselves in a
And the thing is that most of this house you could have bought and have shipped, and they would ship hundreds of them at a time. You know, it's a kit house, and you put it up and you hope for the best. So prepare for winter. One should always be preparing for winter.
Unsettled primitive wilderness, so to speak. And so you see things like this. And this makes a lot of sense. And that's what you would expect people would be able to make.
That's not a kit.
Using hand tools, and no machinery, and no power tools weren't invented until 1890, etc. No roads, nothing like that. So you see things like this, and you see the guys, and they have probably clothes that they either made themselves or imported from England. And then you see things like this. 1837. So this is when hardly anybody was there. I mean, who built this thing?
Dude, I mean, this is Dr. Tom Cowan, and he's asking questions like my lunchbox. We've got, I mean, hey, narrow road, you know, we're not going to make the world great again, but at least we know we're right. We have no reason to doubt. It's time to realize, wow, the best way to fight these guys is not fight them. You know, for them, if they keep spending all the money to come out and fight you and you don't show up, it's not economically feasible for them to keep hunting you while their cities burn. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a flat earth nation.
Where did they get the bricks? Where did they get the road? How did they build the road? Who built this structure? Why did they build it? A government house in Sydney, Australia, 1837, 20,000 people in the whole continent, and they're building this castle.
Why not?
And this is Tasmania nearby, 1840. That was hardly even settled. Here's another amazing structure. Where did they get the bricks?
As you can see, this is not me giving medical advice. This is me saying somebody that the world listened to. And it does seem like, this is my opinion, it does seem like Dr. Tom Cowan and his friends kind of won the argument and kind of, there's that Dr. Fauci. Where's he at? Where's he at? And now the guys that used to go like, hey, this guy's stupid. And how do you ever get his job? These are the guys that are still around. That I don't think that Donald Trump, should he be selected the president, is going to rehire him and bring him back, like the return of Elvis, hey, mask up, separate now. It's Fauci back.
How did they build this thing in 1841? There are actual photographs. 1854. You see amazing sort of glass and steel structures.
Will we have on the narrow road men of renown like Tom Cowan bringing it home for mud flood Armageddon in the near future? Say, thank you, John Levy. But we do have a real rocket scientist.
1854, supposedly people who were riding around in horse-drawn carriages with practically no tires and anything. How did they build such a thing? 1879, how did they build such a thing? So for those of you who still believe in...
And I know, my friends, my narrow road, we've heard this 100 times in the last 10 years, and the people that keep bringing it out as new and in Chicago, but he's bringing it out to a notoriously, I don't want to say higher level, because not many are wise in our neck of the woods, right? Us called ones, not many wise. At least it wasn't before Armageddon, but there was a few.
Normal history. We need answers to the questions of how, why, what was the actual mechanism of building these ginormous structures in 1879 before there were...
It does belittle my argument when you start quoting the Elf Will Ferrell movie and the word, the ginormous thing, that's beneath us. I'm kidding.
Was any transportation, before there was any engines, before there were any glass factories anywhere in sight. Who built these? Why did they build them? And more importantly, how did they build them? And then we see the same thing at the Chicago World's Fair. This is, I think, in the late 1800s. So again, we see
1893.
This amazing architecture and these buildings that were made before power tools, before there was any engines or paved roads.
Honestly, when people hear it for the first time, they get their mind blown. And even if they're usually busy going like, I'm going to prove synapses and ribosomes don't exist. There is no blood barrier. And wow, wait till he sees the San Francisco exposition. Even it's mind blowing on all levels.
And there was some even, this is a pure gold statue of some Roman deity. Why would they do this?
Tom.
How did they carve these channels, etc., with no machinery? It just boggles the imagination. And so we really have to ask ourselves, is history what we've been told? And I will leave that again here. I went over this in some longer things, and you can look.
It's fun, huh? No, this is the part where I really want you to, this is what we're here for. Let's get his opinion right off the cuff. A man that I think is proven, except he doesn't really think that this is all gold. He means it's gold leaf. He doesn't mean pure gold. He knows there's no such thing as a pure gold statue like that.
Torn down and destroyed by a fire a few years later. And again, you see these unbelievable structures made in a time where the technology to make something like this simply doesn't exist.
Get into the trees.
Then we looked at the history of the vegetation.
That's the new big itchy ear thing, that forget about the living stones. Let's talk about the trees. He has an opinion on this. I think we should listen.
That existed in the period. Now here we're talking 1880 to 1920. These enormous trees the likes of which we don't see anymore. And here's some other versions of them. And you see just how enormous these trees are. And then you get into this anomaly, which is the petrified forest, which is that some of these trees, when you cut them, they're actually made of quartz, or they're made of, they have a silica-based crystalline structure. And of course, that gets into how did that happen? Aren't we told that all trees, all living things are carbon-based? Isn't that the basis of carbon dating and our whole history of the timeline of our world? And the basis of evolution is that we're all carbon.
All right, I gotta interrupt this one right here. My first rabbit trail. I'm gonna open up a new tab right there. It just goes. So I'm gonna go. How do you spell osteon? So, this has been my arguments for years. And since that is such a good picture, forget that this one here is poking out. This osteon, where you at, Tom? You look at here. I want you to get a close up. See how those osteons are and how they're broken these same sections. Thank you for that. You see how those osteons are. Here's an osteon, better picture of it. And it's that spongy bone of a titan. It's osteon. It's petrified wood. It looks a little bit like wood, but it's bone. And the reason that these things break off is because they got to have a blood supply, and they run, and sometimes you can get a better view here of how it works. Get more of a visualization on this one. See why it would break in a section? Some of them would look more like tree rings, and other them they just look confusing. But then it'd be like, a tree, I see bark, it's a tree ring. You're not really seeing a tree. Did Tom come to that conclusion? You heard him talk about something called silica.
Based. And yet, when you cut down these old trees, you see that they're made of quartz. They're made of silica. And so then you go looking. So how did these carbon-based trees become petrified, become made of silica? And they give you this ridiculous answer. Well, the tree fell in a lake or a stream, and the stream had a lot of silica in it. And then the silica embedded into the tree, and that ended up crystallizing. And then you get these crystallized trees. Of course, we've never been able to see anything like that. But trust us, that's how.
All right, petrified boys, you're not arguing only with Paco now. You got a known thinker. It sounds like he's on the good guys.
How it worked. And
I'm just kidding, but not really.
frankly, I don't buy it. And I think the world must have been or may have been.
Here you could kind of see whatever would be going on with this end of the osteon, but there's its break because it needed its nerve, oxygen, vein artery breakage here. It looks like this would be some sort of another break. So who knows what actually where this muscle was?
Been a very different place, made out of very different things, not so long ago. And here you see a close-up of the inside of a tree. And how could that possibly happen? And then you see these structures that look like living things. That's the structure of a living thing. And so was that actually a living being? And here you see another enormous aspect of these columns that look like honeycombs of bees. And you see just how enormous this is. And is this possibly a living structure? In which case, our whole conception of the earth and what it was made of and what living beings were made of needs to be reevaluated. And again, we don't need to know what is true to know that story doesn't seem to hold up. Now, when they tell us, well, this was volcanic eruption and that's how the lava coagulates into this, but that's actually what happens when there's lava that coagulates, not this. This is the structure of a living being.
You see, but when I tried to click it like that, it wouldn't do it. Why are all of these things? Oh, it seems like they're broke off in spaced intervals. Well, doesn't your muscle have, these would have all been hit with a glittering sword, folded in motion. You could probably tell. Eventually, once some of the brighter people that get involved in this, because let's face it, I've been mostly spiritual boy, but when these guys get involved into it, they're going to be able to tell you which way this ankle or calf or wherever this muscle came from that's sticking up out of the ground there. They'll be able to say, yeah, he was actually running to the right or something. You can't, but nobody will listen.
And then you see other views of this and just see, is it possible that the earth was a really different place, which negates made of and living beings were actually not carbon based, which then negates the whole principles of carbon dating, which negates the whole understanding of the age of the earth and even of evolution. And then you see what a cut tree looks like. And these are from various places. This is, I think, Italy and Namibia. And so is it possible that these were actually what living things were made of back in some time before?
If they were human, the living things, not if the trees were really trees. So I kind of like the way this guy thinks. It's got a interesting flair. I didn't see his closing. Let's check it out together.
So let's stop with that. I don't want to go through that right now. And so it looks like we're out of time. I just wanted to say that the other two things that I wanted to get into, which I'm just going to briefly mention, we looked at the whole phenomena of the nuclear atom and therefore nuclear weapons. And for those of you who want to look
now, there you go. I actually did hear this because my memory just was jogged. That means something was dropped onto a hard surface, like I was when my brain was reset, kissing the side of the dike on the Rio Grande here, where I live in Alamosa County. And he's going to get into it. There's no nuclear weapons. We study that all the time, right? Narrow Road. I know you're here, and I know you're going like, we were just studying this because like a week ago they were fake dropping bombs. That's the way I felt. I was hoping there's a little bit of something
into this more. I would look at this book, Death Objects Exploding.
Okay. So now to remind myself, because I have a busy day, I'll take a picture of that So I'll remember that book. I want to look at that. Faking Nuclear Weapons. I need some proof.
The nuclear weapons hoax by Akio Nakatomi. And then another book which recently came to my attention, which explodes another myth, which is the myth that we need something called government in our lives. And I would look at a book about the most important superstition, I think is the name of it, by a fellow named Larkin Rose.
Larkin Rose, most famous for his short video, The Dot. I wonder if we should look that up. The Dot. I haven't looked that up in a long time. Sometimes he's on the YouTube, sometimes he's not on the YouTube, sometimes he has a big channel, sometimes he doesn't have a big channel.
Once upon a time, there were 100 million people. They had different interests, different beliefs, different occupations, but for the most part, they got along pretty well. Then one day, a gang of a few hundred people showed up. Need to zoom in some more to see them. I know they're there somewhere. Zoom in. There they are.
Where?
And this gang of a few hundred
Oh.
said to the throng of 100 million, from now on, you all have to give us a cut of everything you earn.
This is an accurate graphical comparison between the number of American taxpayers and the number of U.S. congressmen. Graphical comparison between the number of American taxpayers and the total number of IRS employees.
Time went by, and the gang of a few hundred said, now we want more of what you earn. And this kept happening. Now the gang of a few hundred was getting trillions of dollars every year, spending it on wars and pyramid schemes, giving away goodies to their friends, buying influence. We're powerless against them. We'd better just do as we're told. So they did as they were told, got poorer and poorer, and lived miserably ever after. Are you perhaps wondering, why does the throng need the permission of the dot to do anything? Why do these people feel the need to ask this tiny little dot if they can keep more of what they earn? Why would they spend year after year literally begging for lower taxes? Obeys this minuscule little parasitic gang of control freaks. What could possibly explain this? Let's ask the dot. This is how it works. When we, the dot, take your money and spend it on things you don't like, we're representing you. Spend it on things you don't like. And so you should thank us and treat us with great respect and honor. I hope that cleared everything up for you.
Yeah. Wow. So not only are we super more informed than we've ever been on how we've been normalized, I guess, now we have a topic, because I've been looking for that whole mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses to be, because it's no fun being, it's like, Ellen Paco and Eric DeBay don't like nuclear weapons. Well, now it's me and Tom Cowan don't like nuclear weapons, and he's saying this guy wrote a book I should read, so I'm going to check it out. But in the meantime, if you could, please remember the Flat Earth Nation, the Golden Age is past, because the mud flood was Armageddon. Me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? We're trying to prove we have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arriba derchi ciao. Sayonara. Avida se naka.